Have you ever loaded a scene on your X32 or M32 and suddenly things are changed but not the way you wanted them to? Maybe your mix buses are different, the channel sounds wrong, or your routing isn't what you expected anymore. If that's happened to you, you're not alone. In a previous video, I showed you how to save and load your mixes on the Behringer X32 and the M32, but you might have noticed that there are several other tabs in the scenes section and wondered what all of those actually do. Well, that's what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to walk through the scenes section of your mixer, the scenes, the snippets, cues, and safes. And we'll learn how to use them so loading a scene doesn't accidentally change things you didn't expect. All right, before we start, let's zoom out for just a second. The scene section on the X32 can feel kind of complicated if you just jump right into it. But in reality, there's only 4 ideas happening here: scenes, snippets, cues, and safes. Scenes are full snapshots. That's the whole mixer, almost everything saved at one moment in time. Snippets are partial snapshots. So instead of saving the entire console, you decide what gets saved and what gets recalled. Cues are basically triggers. They load a scene, a snippet, or both. And then safes are protection. They keep you from certain things being changed when you load a scene. If you understand these 4 roles, full snapshot, partial snapshot, trigger, and protection, the rest of this menu actually makes a lot more sense. And now that you have the big picture, let's go ahead and jump into it. So let's go ahead and start with the scenes tab. The first thing that you want to do is press the view button on the right side of the console here in the scenes section. That brings you to the scene menu. If on your screen you don't see your scenes, that's okay. You're probably just in the cues or snippets tab. Just press the left or right button until you're in scenes. Now on this screen, you should see a list of all the scenes that you've saved. The X32 can save up to a total of 100 scenes. Like I said before, a scene is basically just a snapshot of the entire console. It saves almost everything about your mixer at that moment. Things like your faders, your mutes, EQs, compression, routing, head amp gain, your effects, and your bus sends, almost the entire board. So if you walk up to your mixer, set everything exactly like you want it, and then save that scene, it's capturing that entire setup. That's why scenes are usually used for different events. So for example, you might have one scene for your Sunday morning service, a wedding, a funeral, a guest band, youth night, or even a conference. If the overall setup of the mixer is different, that's where scenes really make sense. Now let me show you exactly how to save one. First, get your mixer set up the way you want it. Then use the left encoder under the screen here to scroll to an empty slot. Once you've picked the slot, press the save button. Now you can name the scene using the encoders under the screen. After you name it, press save again. Now that scene is stored on your console. Later, if you want to recall it, just scroll to the scene you want, press load, and then confirm. But this is the important part. Whenever you load a scene, your console will try to match whatever was saved in that scene exactly. That means your faders, your routing, your gain, effects, everything, unless something is safed. You can see the safes here on the left side of your screen in the scene menu, and we're going to talk about safes later in the video because they're really important. But by default, scenes override almost everything. So if you load an old scene where routing was different, you could accidentally change your live stream feed or your monitor mixes. Scenes are powerful tools, but they're also kind of blunt instruments. They just restore the console to that save state. Okay, next, let's talk snippets. To get the snippets from the scene tab, press the right button to move over to the snippets tab on your screen. Just like scenes, the X32 can store up to 100 snippets. Now, the easiest way to think about snippets is that they're basically mini scenes. So instead of recalling everything, you choose specific parameters and you choose which channels those parameters apply to. For example, you may only want to save mute states for channels 1 through 8. Or maybe I just want to adjust the effects levels for a specific moment in the service. That's where snippets become very useful. They're also great for things like songs during a worship set. Let's say song 1 uses tracks and an acoustic guitar. Then in song 2, we drop the tracks and add electric guitar. You don't need a whole scene for that. You just need something that changes only what needs to change, and that's exactly what snippets do. So again, scenes overwrite almost everything, Snippets overwrite only what you tell it to.
Cool. Cool. Pew.
That's why snippets are usually described as a scene within a scene. Let's go ahead and walk through creating one. First, choose the parameters you want the snippet to control. Over here on the screen, you'll see different options like mute, fader levels, routing, and other channel settings. For this example, I'm going to choose mute. Now that I've selected this parameter, I'll choose what channels I want the snippet to apply to. Let's say channels 1 through 8. Now I set the mixer the way I want it for this moment in the service. Maybe I mute a couple of these channels and leave a few active. Once everything is set the way I want it, I press save. Give it a name, and then I confirm it. Now, whenever I load the snippet, it will only recall the mute states for those channels, and it won't touch anything else on the console. One important thing to remember is the order. You choose your parameters first, then set the mixer the way you want it, and then save the snippet. If you do it in the opposite order, you might not capture what you think you're capturing. Next, onto cues. Now from the Snippets tab, go ahead and hit the left button over twice until you are on the Cues tab. Cues are basically automation. They let the console load scenes and snippets for you in a specific order. The X32 can save up to 500 cues. Each cue can load a scene, a snippet, or both together. For example, you might build a cue list like this. Q1 loads your Sunday service scene. Q2 loads a snippet for the worship set. Q3 loads a snippet for the sermon. And Q4 loads a snippet for the closing song. Instead of manually loading those things one by one, you can just move through the cue list and trigger them in order. To create one, you want to create the cue first, then you assign which scene, snippet, or both that you want to load. Now you might notice the cue numbers can be nested, things like 1, and then 1.1, and then even 1.1.1. The numbering is mostly just for organization, and it lets you group related cues together without having to completely renumber your cue list. So in other words, you could just do Q1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or Q1, 1.1, 2, 2.1, 2.11. It's all up to your imagination how you want to do that. Now, if you have a cue that loads both a scene and a snippet, the console will load the scene first, and then it will load the snippet right after that. So there is a tiny bit of delay between the two, just, a couple milliseconds. So you might notice something weird, but don't worry about it. It's just loading one and then the other. In most churches, cues are honestly optional. I don't use them myself. A lot of teams just manually load scenes and snippets when they need them. But if you're running something more structured like a play, conference, or production, cues can be really helpful because they let you move through everything step by step. Now let's go ahead and jump back and talk about safes. You'll see safes on two of the tabs, the cues and the scenes tab. These are here because they protect you from accidentally breaking things when you load a scene. For example, here in the scene section, you'll find this area above the right encoder called scene safes. These allow you to prevent certain sections of the mixer from being changed when you load a scene. So even if a scene has different settings saved, the console will ignore these parts if they are saved. For example, you can save the routing IO, which protects everything in the routing menu, all of your inputs, outputs, and patching. This can be especially helpful if you're running a live stream from your mixer, because you probably don't want a scene to suddenly change where your audio is going. You can also save console configuration and channel linking. Channel protects the main channel strip settings like EQ, compression, and gates. You can also save mix buses, which protect your bus settings. These are helpful if you've dialed in your monitor mixes or if you're running your live stream through a mix bus. There's also safes for your effects racks and the talkback section as well. The idea is simple. If something's saved here, loading a scene will not change it. So even though scenes normally overwrite almost everything, safes let you protect the parts of your console that need to stay consistent. Let's jump over to the Param tab and look at parameter safes. Parameter safes protect types of settings across your entire mixer. What this lets you do is protect certain categories of parameters so that they never change when you load a scene. For example, if you save the head amp, the gain and phantom power settings will not change when a new scene's loaded. That can be really important because if a scene suddenly changes your gain structure in the middle of your service, that can cause all kinds of problems. You can also save things like EQ. Then no EQ anywhere on the console will change if you load a scene, not on channels, buses, or outputs. This can be really helpful if you spent time dialing in something like monitor wedges to prevent feedback. If the EQ is safe, loading an old scene won't undo that work. The key idea here is that parameter safes protect parameter types across your entire mixer. Now, one thing to be careful of. If you safe too many parameters, scenes start to become less useful, and at some point you're loading a scene and barely anything changes. So safes are great for protecting the things that should stay consistent. You just don't want to overdo it. All right, the last protection is our channel safes. These let you protect specific channels from being changed whenever a scene is loaded. So instead of protecting a type of parameter across the entire board, like we just talked about, this protects an entire channel. To get the channel safes, go ahead and press right on your mixer until you get to the Chan Safe tab. And then from here, you can choose exactly what channels you want to protect. You can safe things like input channels, returns, mix buses, your main outputs, pretty much everything that is a channel. If a channel is saved here, when you load a scene, nothing about that channel will change. So if I save channel 1, the EQ, the fader position, compression, and routing, all of that will stay exactly the same, even if the scene I load has something different saved. This could be really useful for things that should stay consistent across scenes. For example, your passer's mic, an announcement mic, your live stream mix bus, your talkback mic, you get the picture. Those things you probably don't want changing just because somebody loads a different scene. So channel safes let you lock down specific channels while still allowing the rest of the console to recall normally. So that was a lot to go over, but I hope that scenes section is a little bit less of a mystery for you now. If this video helped you out, I'd really appreciate a like. It'll help people find this video. And if there's something you're struggling with on the X32 or church audio or live stream in general, go ahead and leave a comment and I'll see if I could tackle it in a future video. That's it for this one. I'll see you next time.